Just forgot to record. Okay. So thanks, Reza, for sharing that. And yeah, you have a lot of fabric, and I think there'll be AI sessions related to fabric as well, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So that's the conference. If you would like to register, Reza, if you can give the link, globalpowerbi.summit.com,
Yep, I already
in the
put that
chat. Yeah.
in the
Okay.
chat.
Yeah.
Yep, thank
Thanks.
you.
Yeah. And then we are having another event from this same meetup, Auckland Artificial Intelligence Meetup, which is called the Global AI Boot Camp. It will be for 2 hours on March 12th, and it will be in person in Auckland, in the Microsoft office from 5 to 7 p.m. And I think we won't allow Dan to go on holiday.
Holiday.
Hopefully. Yeah, he's going away on holiday, so we'll have times and other people helping us from Microsoft. Okay, so now today's agenda is, um, yeah, I'm going to cover Azure AI Foundry, a couple of slides, what Azure AI Foundry is, and also a little bit of maybe a 5-minute demo as to what AI Foundry consists of. And then I'll hand over to the lovely Dan. So he will be covering all the Azure AI announcements that happened from since Ignite. So there have been a lot of other announcements that happened in the last couple of months as well. So he's going to cover that. So let's get into Azure AI Foundry. So in this slide, what you can see is there is a Azure AI Foundry is like like a unified platform uh, which was released by Microsoft, and which is designed to streamline the development and deployment and management of the AI applications. So previously we have Azure AI Studio, Azure OpenAI Studio, and then you have the Azure AI services, and now they are all like combined into Azure AI Foundry. So if you use Azure AI Foundry, you can sort of create a project and then install all these relevant services that you would want to install, and then utilize the environment. And when it
Indira,
Yeah.
your slide's not sharing.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, thanks, Vada.
Okay, can you all see my screen? So yeah, I think previously I don't know whether you have seen that. That is the agenda for today, and that's the Global AI Bootcamp I was talking about, March 12th in Microsoft Office. I'll put the link shortly. Uh, and then, yeah, and now the Azure AI Foundry, this is what I was talking about. So here, uh, you can use Azure AI Foundry with Copilot Studio or Visual Studio or even GitHub, and then you have a separate Azure AI Foundry SDK as well. I haven't played around with those. Dan can talk about them. They are his pet friends, pet projects. So yeah, and so what I'm saying is, usually previously we had OpenAI Studio and Azure AI Studio to spin up when we are working with Azure OpenAI and Azure AI services. Now we can just open the Azure AI Foundry on ai.azure.com, and then you can create a project which will install all these all the it will install a project and a hub and all the services, which I will show you in a moment. And then you have these you can view the model catalog. It will have foundational models, open source models, task models, and industry models. And you will have these services as well: Azure AI agent service, which is very new, and AI search, which we can use to create um, vector searches and rags and all these rag documents and things like that. And Azure OpenAI service can be used to deploy models like the GPT-4, 4.0 mini, 4.0, and all those things, all GPTs. And then and then you can use the developer tools for like Copilot Studio and things like that. And lastly, you can also do observability, the governance and customization and monitoring, create monitoring solutions as well as to how much how many tokens you are spending, and then what number of prompts and all those things you can analyze and um, ascertain yourself what the usage is of the company, um, because I think the data gets stored in Cosmos DB. Okay, so then coming to the next slide, it is mainly uh, collaboration. It's a new collaboration from industries. So these are the industries that Microsoft is collaborating. But so these are the collaborations means they are joining with their own models, and then who are doing a lot of stuff inside the using Azure AI Foundry for their own customers. And if we look at the data ingestion side, these are the data ingestion storage data that we can use. So we can use Microsoft Fabric, Cosmos DB, Azure Redis, Bing Search. We have been using quite a lot, and Azure AI Search, SharePoint, and then I haven't used OSS databases. And then Azure SQL database. So we can ingest data from all these kind of databases, and also provision cloud resources for compute and storage and data and identity, because you need identity for secure access. And also Azure AI services. AI services encapsulate all the services. Previously, it used to be called cognitive services. And then you can do a app hosting as well. So you can host your web apps using app hosting service. And if we look at this side, you can orchestrate the orchestrate with semantic kernel, LangChain, Llama Index, and Autogen. I haven't worked on any of them. So and then leverage Azure App Services. Yeah, we can use functions, logic apps, container apps, and Kubernetes and Dynamics sessions and PubSub. I have used functions, logic apps, and container apps, but not the other three. And also monitor in production. So you can the whatever you use in the Azure AI Foundry, when you deploy it to a website or a Teams chatbot, the interactions um, of the prompts and the responses are stored in Cosmos DB. If you choose the to store the chat history, and then that can be monitored using you can create your own monitoring solutions. We normally use Power BI connecting to the Cosmos DB, but you can also use Azure Monitor and then Azure App Config. I don't know about the other two, Arise and Weights and Bases. And uh, encompassing all these is you can use it with the Copilot Studio Power Platform, Azure AI Foundry portal, which is I think is the SDK, and you can use Azure machine models built from Azure machine learning as well. You can use GitHub for CI/CD, storing the repository, Visual Studio Code, and Azure DevOps for deploying the ARM templates and bicep code and things like that. And everything is encompassed in the Azure portal. So those are the two slides that I wanted to cover. And now to go to the demo. So I will just stop sharing my PowerPoint presentation, and I will share my browser. Hopefully I'm there. Yeah, okay. Okay, so in order to go into Azure AI portal, you just need to go into ai.azure.com and you need to sign in. I am already signed in. And then once you sign in the overview, it creates like steps it shows you the steps. So first you need to choose your subscription, which I have already done. So there is a tick mark. So it is guided help is available. So create a project. I have created a project named that one. I didn't change the name of the project. And then the next step is deploying model GPT-0 4.0. So I'll just deploy that. And while that is deploying, let's go through what is there in the model catalog. So if you go to the model catalog, you can see different models from different companies. So this is Fee 4 is from Microsoft, O3 Mini is there, GPT-4 is Azure OpenAI models. DeepSeek is also there if you want to try. So there are a lot of models which you can try. So you are just seeing these models. These are not deployed yet. So if you want to deploy, you can just select the model and then you can deploy it. The models that have been deployed in my, okay, this, yeah, so this, if you want to see what models have been deployed, here is my, oh, I don't have any models. Okay. Anyway, that is deploying. So we will have one model. So I'm deploying in the East US. If you want, you can customize as well. So when but while that is getting deployed, I'll show you what the project looks like. So in the project, it is showing the AI interface model and interface endpoint, and it is this is the subscription that it has been using, and then you have the resources. Where we get the resources? So there will be a AI hub that will be created, and then the project you have seen already, the project name, and also the AI services that has been deployed. Not sure where do I see that,
down
Dan?
on that, right down the bottom, there's the management.
Management center. Oh, okay.
Management. Yeah, it's
Right.
because you
Okay.
zoomed in. Yeah.
Yeah. So here is the resource group. So if I go to the resource group, then you can see all the resources in that particular resource group. Yeah, so what the resources that has been installed is Azure AI Services, Azure AI Project, Azure AI Hub, and then a key vault for storing the keys of the all the services, and also there is a storage account that has been created. So these are all have been automatically created for you when you create the project. And coming back to the Azure AI portal, so I think we have the model deployed now. Yeah, so deploy model GPT-4.0 mini is done. Now explore the playground. So that's what we will do. So if we go into the, not the management center, but the overview. Okay, so if I go into here, so you can see the chat playground where you can try the chat playground, or maybe you can just try it out. So I can try this one. So I can try, let's say, speech playground or the real-time audio. So if I go here, you can go speech to text. And then if you record myself, so I'll just say, so it's going to allow while visiting this site. So now it's recording, and then it is going to transcribe here. So whatever I'm saying, even us and ums are recorded. Hello guys, how are you? Thanks for joining us. And then I can stop, and then you can use that text. So that is the real-time transcription. You can do a batch transcription, fast transcription, speech translation. If you are speaking in another language, you can translate that to English and things like that. And also, if we go into real-time audio playground. You can try these out, agents playground, and all these things. What I want to show you quickly is just getting into the time thing. So you can see, you can go into the code, and then there are some GitHub resources available for you to use as an um, initial code repository, and then you can develop on it. We have used not Contoso Chat, but I think Azure OpenAI Chat or something like that, the repository, and it has the real good interface, and we developed on it in our company. So you can definitely use those kind of these codes, and then you can view the tutorial and then try and get up to speed with that. And agents is also available. I think Dan is going to cover on that, and I think that's all I'll show for now. Over to you, Dan.
Awesome. Thanks, Indira. I know the RAG solution you're talking about. That's Azure Chat, and I posted a link in there, the GitHub repo for that. That was actually developed by Tivi, one of the GBBs out of and many others, but out of Australia. Did an amazing job, and it is a really slick interface. Plus, it does a whole lot of other cool things. So, if you want to get started really quickly, that is definitely a way to do it. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. By the way, if you have not met me, I am Dan. I get called DSR. I am a partner solution architect at Microsoft, specializing in AI and data. I spend my life finding exciting ways to use AI to ideally solve other people's problems, but I usually just use it to solve my own. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've seen change over the last 3-4 months since Ignite, but I'll also talk about agents in a little bit of detail, because we are really moving away or moving beyond AI that just answers questions to AI that actually takes actions for us. They're more autonomous. They're able to do things. They act on our behalf, and then these potentially multi-agent systems. So let me jump ahead over these slides. So this is what we're going to talk about now. The challenge is there is so much happened in the last 4 months. So much was announced at Ignite. There was so much that happened. There's so many new features. I mean, everyone's talking about these new reasoning models, which have been around for a while, but of course the leap forward and that DeepSeek and R1 and then newer models coming out, announcements from OpenAI with things like GPT-5 and of course O3 and O3 Mini, all those models. So we're going to not try and focus too much on the models because they're always going to change. And that's really key for what Indira has been talking to you about is Foundry is a platform to help you adopt whatever technologies in the AI space are best for your use case and manage that, monitor it, and then continuously evaluate and improve. And if you've been in the DevOps space, you know how important this is. You can think of Foundry as basically DevOps or Gen AI Ops platform. It's like DevOps for your AI and agentic applications. So it provides that entire tooling suite for you in one place and helps you bring all of those technologies together. But I'm not going to talk about Foundry. I am going to skip over this. But as Indira said, one of the big changes in the last wee while is the number of models that are coming out and available in Foundry. We did start with all the OpenAI models, but now we're seeing a lot of first-party models from Microsoft, especially in things like the health and life sciences. For example, models where you can actually upload an X-ray image and it will identify things like fractures and, various other conditions in the X-rays. You can upload CT scans and other types of medical imaging. So some really amazing things happening in those spaces. And these are not just Microsoft models, they're not just OpenAI. So there are two ways that Foundry provides those models to you. There's what we call models as a service, which is the consumption type models, which is, where you basically pay per token. You're saying, I'm going to send a prompt through the API and I'm going to get some tokens back and I'm going to pay just for what I use. But then there's also the models as a platform, which is MAAP. And that is where I'm going to host them. I'm going to basically have some infrastructure provided by Microsoft to me, and that model will be deployed and hosted on that infrastructure on my behalf. But I'm paying for that infrastructure, so whether I use it or not. So those two types of model deployments, and it's worth being aware of those. Not all models are available on all model deployment types. So you'll find the most common and the most highly demanded as the models as service, available as models as a service. But that's really what I wanted to call out. So one of the big changes is we get this demand. Everyone wants OpenAI, of course, you know, to use the OpenAI models, but there is a greater and greater demand for these other models from, you know, our partners like Mistral and Meta and Cohere, and there's many of them. They all want this model of models as a service where you pay per click, you know, you just pay for what you use. So this is where the new Azure AI model inference service comes in, which allows you to consume many of these other models as a service, just pay for what you need. And that was generally available, and it's inside Azure AI Foundry, and it's what Indira was showing you before. So you're going to see more and more of those models be available as as pay per click. So that was a big announcement, and that's going to continue to accelerate. Next on our list. Now, anyone who's done anything to do with RAG, anyone built a RAG solution, throw up a thumbs up. Anyone who's touched RAG in the last 2 years, if you're not familiar with RAG, RAG is retrieval augmented generation. It's a way for us to enrich the prompts or provide the grounding information to the large language model, either of our internal data or specific knowledge that it needs to accurately and reliably answer the question that we've asked. However, the problem we often find is that we need these very specialized index engines that support embeddings and vectors to allow the model to find the relevant data. And this is part of this RAG process. And we've got a number of choices of technologies we can use to host this index. Many of you have been familiar with Azure AI Search. That's the one of the first party indexing services that we've got. And this is very much the premium choice, or certainly a good choice. I wouldn't say it's a premium choice. It's going to be a really good all-rounded choice for when you are building these indexes, or when you need to provide these RAG indexes for your solution. But one of the big changes with Azure AI Search is this thing called SLM powered query rewriting. When you are building a RAG solution, the first thing that actually happens is your AI application will write a query and make a query to that index to say, here's the documents here's the things that I'm looking for in the database. Now that query is usually generated by another LLM, and that was a separate step in your process, something you had to manage. It was just another step. Now with Azure AI Search, they've actually built this SLM-powered query rewriting into it. So you don't actually have to make that extra step. You can just say, go find the documents. It does the query rewrite and returns what you need. Another big change was this upgraded re-ranking model. Obviously, when you using a RAG solution, and perhaps you're building an HR solution, and it says, give me all the policies for leave. I certainly need to know that because I'm going to go on holiday. You ask that question of the LLM, and it is going to go and look in your index for the relevant docs. And it will return, maybe it'll return 10 documents, maybe it'll return 20. What's really important though is, what is the order of those documents? Because we're only going to choose maybe the first 5, maybe the first 10 to give to the model. And if they're not the right ones, even if it's found 20 that relate to holiday policy, we're not going to get as good a result. So there is a new re-ranker that was enabled in Azure AI, which vastly improves the scoring of vector responses or vector searches. I won't go into the standards and relevance. There's a whole lot of work that's been done in making sure the right indexes, right entries in the index are returned. So fine-tuning Azure OpenAI service. This is another one. Most people are not fine-tuning models, but in case you're not aware, so the models we often get are pre-trained by OpenAI or by the provider. They may be fine-tuned in various ways to set up behaviors, but we can often choose to fine-tune them to either improve performance or change the behavior of the model. We often don't use fine-tuning to train model knowledge because A, the knowledge typically changes, and B, it's not a reliable way of doing it. But there are good reasons to do that. But now we've enabled you to be able to use distillation, which I'm sure many of you have heard of if you've followed the DeepSeek R1. Distillation was how they produced the R1 model, which is a process of using a very smart LLM to train or fine-tune a less smart LLM to improve the capability or teach that model. So we talked about creating agents before. Yeah, maybe we're going in that direction. But yeah, the ability to fine-tune vision models is another one. And of course, now we are able to, if we fine-tune a model, if we produce a model, or fine-tune our own model, we can actually now deploy that either as a global standard, which is a deployment type where the model is actually deployed to multiple regions around the world, and our application can use whichever one. Now, that's probably not, most of us don't have that level of scale or need, but it's nice to know that we can. So let's move on a little bit. Okie dokie. Let's talk about agents. As Indira said, this is something I wanted to talk about. This is the next evolution. We've spent the last couple of years really focusing on RAG and solutions that help us answer questions, right? But now we are moving towards this agentic future where rather than just answering questions, we are setting up these AIs to actually help us take actions, and reason over the request that is being made to come up with an actual plan or solution to a problem. These AI agents are typically also able to either operate proactively. For example, if I receive an email asking to set up a meeting with me, perhaps I might want an agent that automatically sees that email and negotiates with the person and finds a time in both our calendars at work and sets it up without me having to send the email saying, hey, does 10:30 on Friday work for you? We've all had those situations. So these sorts of proactive agents that are triggered off not just what we do, but what events occur. And of course, these agents can then call things like APIs or use tools, and that's where things get really powerful, because they can go and look at data in other systems in our database and Fabric and wherever it is. They can go and call where there are APIs, and they are able to then also call APIs to take actions. So that's how these agents are really going to start to change, and we're going to start to think of building solutions around building agents. So what are the key applications of agents? Automation. Fundamentally, it's really about automating processes and helping us offload all of that horrible work, like scheduling meetings, like booking travel, like all of that stuff that we kind of don't want to do, but we have to do it. The goal of agents, or one of the outcomes of agents, is to start to take a lot of that load off us, so that we can focus on the things that we need to do as humans, which is creative thinking and really using our unique abilities. So I'm not going to focus too much on this, but there are a large number of key use cases that we're seeing across industries. I think you can probably imagine in whatever industry you're in, probably in technology, but you might be in retail or finance, and there is just so many tasks that agents are now starting to be able to be taken on and help with your day-to-day life. And I think it's always worth just sort of keeping an eye and thinking, could I use an agent to do this job? Could I get it off my plate so I can focus on something that I do want to do? So with that in mind, just a quick thumbs up. Has anyone heard of the Assistance API that was part of OpenAI? If you haven't, yeah, we got one thumbs up. I'm sure that possibly is Luke, Marcel. We got Indira. You will have or seen what we call OpenAI GPTs, which was the ability to say, I'm going to take a large language model, combine it with some knowledge, RAG, combine it with the ability to run code and some tools, the ability to call APIs. Now that was a fantastic, it brought all fantastic set of tools, and it brought the functionality of agents together and made them really simple for anyone to create. Because you didn't have to worry about, I don't need to worry about a database for managing, the conversational thread. I don't need to worry about, managing APIs. I don't need to worry about, running code in a secure and safe space. The problem is you are, number one, tied to a model. For example, if you really like Mistral, you're really into Mistral models, they do a great job for your particular scenario, but you wanted to build an agent, you were kind of hamstrung. You couldn't choose the model you wanted to choose when you're using assistants. So, and you can think of assistants as almost being synonymous with agents. So seeing this problem and seeing the other problem that you didn't get control over the way your conversational data was stored. You didn't get control over, could I put everything in a network? And a lot of organizations go, we need to control all of these things. So with that in mind, Microsoft decided that there was, and it says coming soon, but it is actually available in public preview now. We created the Azure AI Agent service, which was basically a way for you to bring your own model, choose the model you wanted. It's not for all models, but is able to choose a model. You're able to set up networking around the everything to get that enterprise grade security. You're able to set up data connections, for example, a SharePoint to Fabric to Confluence to whatever, whatever your systems are, you can set up and manage those connections in the secure way that you need to use them. And you can obviously choose the model that suits you. And this brings it all together and allows you to host those agents without having to worry about what infrastructure do I put them on? Do I put them as an app service? Do I run it over here? How do I host that? All of that is managed by the Azure AI agent service. You just configure your agent, you push it up to the Azure Agent AI service, and it hosts the agent for you. So having a look at it in a little bit more detail. So and this sort of goes back to what I was just saying. If you're familiar with the Azure OpenAI Assistance API, you would have known everything was tied together. You had the ability to do file search and code interpreter, and it was all tied tightly together. But as we have extended this into the Azure AI Agent service, you can now bring other models. So the models that are currently supported, and I think there's actually two more that's missing off here. There's another Cohere model. So there's the Azure there's GPT-4 and 4o Mini, Llama 3.1, 450B Instruct, Mistral Large. I think it's actually Mistral 37B Large 37B, and a couple of Cohere models. You can also add all of these tools. So this is basically allows the agent to go off and talk to Fabric and say, hey, look, I want to look inside this KQL database in Fabric and pull out a bunch of events, or I want to go and search an AI search for a bunch of documents that match this particular vector. Or pretty much go anywhere else. You can go all over the place. You can call logic apps. You can call Azure functions. You can call OpenAI, OpenAI tools that have an OpenAI interface. So the other question we get is, what should I actually use? Where do I actually want to use this tool? And the question really is, what are you trying to build? If you're trying to build an agent and you are expecting this to be in an enterprise environment, there's going to be many other agents available. They're going to be connecting to diverse sets of data. You're going to need to ensure security and everything's wrapped around securely, and you're able to choose the model that fits your particular need. Then agent service is probably a pretty good idea. Interestingly enough, agents service is actually wire compatible with Assistance API. So if you've already built a solution using Assistance API, but you want to swap out the model, you can actually use the same code, the same APIs. So you don't even need to change your application except point it at the agent service instead of the assistance API, and you can use a different model. So you can get all this stuff. If you've gone down this assistance API route, you get all this. You don't have to change anything except point it to the deploy the agent service and deploy it at your agent. So that's a real advantage of how this approach we've done this approach. So that's a whirlwind tour of Azure AI agents. It is in public preview. You can get started, and it is super easy. You literally click a few buttons, and as Indira was showing, once you've got your Foundry hub and you've set up a project, you click agents, you go new agent, pick a model, add some tools, set up your connections, and if you want to set up networking, you can do all that, and start chatting with us. Good to go. Basically, now you can use any application that's set up with our Assistance API to go and use that agent. So I'm going to move on because we don't want to keep you all here all night. The other interesting service that may have slipped through was something called Azure AI Content Understanding. If you've used something like computer vision before, you will have, or document intelligence, you'd have seen these services where you can upload an image and say, and ask, what's going on in this image? There's a dog chasing a bone, and there's a child bouncing a ball, and here's an explanation of what we're seeing in the image. But if you wanted to understand what was going on in some audio, this is the sound of a busy street, and Indira is talking about this. You're not able to do those with the more traditional services. What Azure AI Content Understanding allows you to do is basically upload any one of these four things: documents, audio, images, and video. Define a JSON schema of what data you want to get out of it. I want you to extract a invoice from any image in this document. I want to extract an invoice. Or I want you to give me a list of all the car noises that are heard in this video, or all of the. I want to know where every time a red vehicle shows up in the video, and I want you to tell me whether it was a sedan or a station wagon, and you specify the JSON schema of what you actually want, and it gives you the structured output of everything that's in that content. Now, this is really, really cool, because previously you would have to stitch a whole lot of services together and do a whole lot of work and coding to actually get that to work. So this is quite a cool technology, and I've found myself where I might have used document intelligence, I found myself using this. In fact, I had a challenge the other day where I had a very old SQL schema document, or a data definition document that talked about the database structure, very old, and I wanted to extract a whole lot of meaning from it. So I defined the the JSON schema of the data I wanted. I wanted the table names, I wanted the field names, and I wanted the field data types, and ran this document through it, and it gave me a complete output of all the tables from this very, very old 15-year-old DDL document. So super useful for so many little weird things like that, and some pretty big things. Nearly at the end. So Azure AI content safety. This is always such an important part of what we do. We build these AI applications. We love to think the models are safe and secure, and obviously Microsoft does a lot of stuff around responsible AI and making sure that we do our best to protect you. But of course, you are also responsible for how your system behaves. I always recommend everyone should have a responsible AI approach. Every business who's building or touching AI needs to have a responsible AI approach. And I highly recommend, if you don't have one, go to aks/ams/RAI and use the Microsoft one, or take it and modify it. It's just a set of standards that you can apply to your business. It tells you how to check and make sure that your systems are meeting responsible AI practices. But one of the fundamental tools we've got access to is something called Azure AI Content Safety, which you can put in front of these services. For example, if you've got building a chatbot, you might want to, before you give a response to a user, you might want to check that it meets, it's grounded in the information that you provided to the LLM to say, actually, this is an answer the model has given you an answer that actually was based on the data that was provided. So Azure AI Content Safety, basically a few of the features went GA, I think. So there was groundedness detection, which was it actually detects when the answer that the LLM was given to you, whether it actually uses the knowledge that you were provided. It's not hallucinating. So that's really, really powerful when you need to ensure the accuracy of the result. Prompt shields, which protects or validates before the prompt is sent to the LLM. You run it through prompt shields and it looks for jailbreaks and various other techniques like DANs and do anything now type attacks on the LLM before you send it through. So this is really important, especially if you're putting this out into the public and you need to make sure that someone doesn't maliciously attack it. Protected material detection, which is all about saying, actually, you've asked me to generate some code, but I can see this code is from GitHub and it's actually under a non-open license. I can't provide that to you. So there's a whole lot of stuff around that. And of course, harm categories we've been familiar with for a long time, which is really looking at things like, violence and self-harm and those other four, I think it's 4 categories of harms that it monitors, and you can control and configure how aggressively those harm categories are detected and prevented. As we're on the topic of that, we've also now got risk and safety evaluations for the image content. So if someone, you have a system where people can upload pictures and text and, perhaps on a customer review site, you want to ensure that those images are safe. So we now have risk and safety evaluations on the images as well. So you can actually go, that's a harmful image. I don't want to accept that image. And that's certainly really important when we're doing customer facing stuff. Only a couple more before we wrap. Model experimentation. This is, if you're working at software engineering for a while, you'll be familiar with something called A/B testing, where we want to evaluate the performance of our system against different implementations of our system. For example, we might move the button over to the right versus the left and find out if people like it more. We're now seeing the ability to do this in large language models. For example, you might assume, both models behave really, really well, but you would like to actually test with customers to whether, do they get a better output with this or this? So this allows you to effectively define or load balance across models, so that your system can not only send your requests to different models to say, they will send this one to this model and this one to this model, say GPT-4 mini versus GPT-4o, but also monitor the results. Is the users prefer this output? Are we getting a better result from this? So that's another set of tools. That's pretty cool. I think it's worth having a look at. That's built into GitHub and Visual Studio Code. And the final one is the management center, which Indira showed you a little bit briefly there, and that is the centralized management of all of these tools inside Foundry. That helps you get visibility on who's building how many tokens are being used by this model, what models are deployed. Because as you adopt more and more Foundry, you're going to have multiple hubs. For example, you might have a hub per organizational unit, or you might have a hub per not necessarily per project, but per for a retail component you're building, and you might have multiple projects within that hub. You need control and visibility over all of that stuff. And what Management Center is set up to do is give you that centralized manageability, pane of glass, monitorability, just basically looking at everything's going on. That is now available, and it will continue to evolve. So I'm actually done. I did throw this in here. If you do want to go back and watch some of the Azure AI Foundry stuff that there was, deep dives at Ignite, there is this link, which is akams.ms/Azure AI Foundry at Ignite. You can go back and watch all those videos. You could do them at double speed, which is what I always do. Because we all don't have hours and hours to do it. But if you want to go and have a look at some of those, especially some of the industry specific ones, really cool industry stuff happening. I'm big into the health and life sciences space, and I find that the stuff that's being done there is really, really going to be game changing, not just from a technology perspective, but from a, saving lives. That's so important. We all have the cool stuff of that as agents, but being able to actually save lives is going to be a huge outcome of this sort of technology. So with that in mind, thank you for inviting me, Indira and Reza, to come and share a bit of this, and thank you all for listening to me rabbit on about this stuff. What next, Indira?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dan. And yeah, we can close the session unless somebody wants to. Do you have any questions for Dan?
Yeah, happy to answer any questions. Come off mute if you want.
Good session. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Reza. Thanks, everyone. Luke, I'm sure you have an observation. Come on, mate.
I have one question.
Yeah.
So with AI Foundry agents
Yep.
and the ability, essentially the ability to build out the agent there, really cool stuff. I've dabbled with it very briefly, but where would I use the AI Foundry agents versus something like Semantic Kernel? What would be the differences there?
Oh, such a good question. And for those who don't know, Luke, tell us what Semantic Kernel is.
You can do that. Yeah, I'm stuffing my face with water.
Okay. So Semantic Kernel is an SDK for building and orchestrating AI-based solutions. It is available in C#, JavaScript, and I think Java. If you're familiar with LangChain, you can think of it similar to that. But it is a code first tool or SDK that really allows you to basically build anything you like with generative AI and AI-based solutions. It is to some degree very similar to agents. It can actually use agents, but if you think it's more along you would start with agents, and if you hit the edges of what agents can do, you might choose to use a semantic kernel because it allows you to do things like prompt chaining and other kinds of more advanced techniques. But what you can do within semantic kernel is you actually you start by defining a kernel, and then you can attach basically tools to the kernel, and one of those can be an agent itself, and that agent can be running an Azure agent service. So it's a great way of, you could start with an Azure AI agent service agent, and then you decide that you need to add a little bit more, but you can't do it in Azure AI agent because perhaps you need to add some more advanced logic, etc. You might use semantic kernel, keep your original agent, and just use semantic kernel to call those out. So it's basically the next level. When you get past to hit assistance, it's the next level up. Does that make sense?
The world's your oyster. Thank you very much.
The world's your oyster. And if you're interested in learning more about semantic kernel, we do have a semantic kernel office hours in the Asia Pacific time zone. It happens every month, I think every Thursday, and the team always, the semantic kernel team are actually on it, and they love to hear from what people are doing and the challenges that you're facing, and they're always good to just talk to about what they're seeing, and if you're running into problems, great people to answer. And I'll dig out a link and drop it in the chat.
I think Marcel did a event this week or last week, Marcel, around semantic kernel, right? In your coding night.
Yes, we had Will, the leader, this Monday, and he talked about semantic kernel, and he showed an example of building agents.
Yeah, maybe if
Nice.
you have the video, did you record?
I'll put a link. Yeah.
Yeah,
nice.
that would be great. Yeah, thank you very much, Marcel. And Marcel will be one of the speakers for our global AI bootcamp event. that is happening on March 12th. So please register. And we are planning to have 4 virtual sessions for this year and 4 in-person sessions. So keep a tab on the meetup. And Reza and I organize these meetups for Auckland Artificial Intelligence meetups. And then Dan is usually the Microsoft person who is always keen to help.
Love helping it. Love being there. Love the work you all do. It's awesome.
Thank you very much, Dan and Reza. And thank you all for joining.
Thank you, Indira.
Otherwise
Thanks,
we would have
Adira.
played.
Thanks, everyone.
If you all
Thanks,
didn't join, we would have played rock, paper, and scissors.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone,
Marcus.
for attending.
Thanks, everyone. Thank
Thanks
you.
all.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Daniel. Thanks, Indira. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here we go. Awesome. Thanks, guys. I will.